Hey, welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Oginen. I'm Jim Quist. And hey, we're glad to be with you. Hope you're enjoying some basketball. We certainly are. Having a little bit of time to watch both men's and women's action. Let's talk about what's going on. The most recent action has been women and a very disappointing loss for NC State, Will. It just, man, it was just like, oh. And I know the fans are doing the same thing. The players, wow. Just an awesome run. And there's absolutely no reason why that team ought to be hanging its head.
Yeah, unbelievable season by the Wolfpack. That was far and away the best game of the tournament. I don't think it's really that close. Just like the clutch shots that NC State kept making, especially at the end of regulation to send it to overtime. And if like I said, Paige Beckers is, one of the best players in women's basketball. And she was unconscious in that second overtime. She was unbelievable. And, obviously the women's Final Four now has its story with Beckers returning home to Minneapolis. But yeah, I think, nothing to, hang your head about. That was a phenomenal season, but I would like to know why they decided to give UConn as a 2 seed a de facto home game in a situation like that. That just
that's what everybody wants to know.
They're doing all these things to change the women's tournament to make it better. And then they go and put them in the same state of their, as their, for their second weekend games. It basically gives them a de facto home game.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, I certainly won't use that as an excuse and say that's the reason that NC State lost. It isn't. There's just multiple factors in that game. And the fact that it went to 2 overtimes and was still as close as it was at the end of the second overtime says everything you need to know about that game and those two teams. They're both awesome. And they both fought it out tooth and nail all the way. And I'm telling you, I just watching NC State all season has just been an absolute pleasure for me from the standpoint of I absolutely love women's basketball. And this team has just been incredible in their run and been clutch when it counted too. In this particular instance, just coming up a little bit short and wow. That is the big question. What you just brought up, Will, is why did UConn get a number 2 seed in Bridgeport? Is anybody's guess. I don't like the feel of it. I don't like the look of it, the smell of it.
It definitely smells fishy. I'm not going to lie to you.
It just everything about it felt wrong from the get-go. When the announcement was made that they were going to be in their own backyard, it was like, what?
See, if they were the 1 seed in that region, totally understandable.
Sure.
But they're the 2 seed. So that's what raises all these questions.
Mm-hmm. I'm not into conspiracy theories, but there's a certain network that also resides in Connecticut. So,
yeah, exactly.
Not that we can go down that. We're going to be arguing this point for the rest of our lives. Let's look at what's coming up with the NCAA women's basketball tournament. Hey, the ACC is not finished yet. Number 1 seed Louisville is going to face number 1 seed South Carolina. That game at 7 p.m. on the aforementioned ESPN. And number 1 Stanford takes on number 2 UConn at 9:30. And that's the Final Four. That is on Friday, April 1st.
I'm really looking forward to that the Louisville game against South Carolina, because you got obviously the Cardinals are making a Final Four appearance. Congrats to them. I know I've already been reached out to our friend Jeremy and was giving his people recommendations on where to eat and where to stay in Minneapolis. And They had a fantastic game, had a pretty strong Elite Eight game where they basically just kept Michigan at arm's length throughout the entire game. It was high single digits for a lot of the game, and then they just put the little like icing on the top of it at the end with the little run, thanks to free throws. And unbelievable season, Coach Jeff Walz. He's probably in the second tier of college coaches in the game. I would put the coach on the other side of that matchup probably up at the top right now. Dawn Staley is just doing an outstanding job. Yeah. South Carolina just continues to crush the competition. She's got the Gamecocks back in the Final Four again, and that is going to be a great matchup. Two really good coaches, and obviously on the other side with Stanford and UConn, that's going to be a great game as well. Stanford kind of returning to glory. I think if I remember correctly, they had a little couple of down years, but they're right back there. And obviously UConn, a lot of the reason they were only a 2 seeds because Beckers was hurt for a while during the season. And now she's healthy. And obviously, as we saw, especially in that second overtime against NC State, that she was unconscious and could pretty much just take over a game at any point. So it's going to be two really good games on Friday night.
She reminds me an awful lot of somebody that numerous years ago went from a high school in Virginia to play at Maryland. Her dad was an NBA ref, and she had that same stroke. It was just unbelievable. You could see her get out on the floor, and it was like no matter what you did, no matter how you covered her, it was like poof, it was there. It was always there. It was like she didn't even look when she shot. And Becker's the same way. And it's amazing when you see athletes that have that sort of talent, they get on the floor and there's an excitement that comes with that. No matter whether you're rooting for that team or not, you just watch that and you're amazed by it. And you just have to appreciate the fact that is an awesome basketball player. Dawn Staley, UVA background there. We're going to talk a little bit about something that has to do with UVA here in just a moment. So remind me in case I skip over that here in a couple of minutes, because you and I were talking.
Are you going to take your best guess at trying to pronounce her name? Stumped you there for a moment.
No. Anyway, so I'm not going to touch that. Not yet. Give me a little more exposure.
You need practice. You need practice.
I need practice. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes it takes 4 years for me. So stick around for 4 years, please, Coach. And that way we can get it down. Will have it immediately. It's like that. Anyway, coming up on April 1st, again, it's South Carolina versus Louisville. That's the first game. And then Stanford versus UConn. That's the second game. That is the Final Four in the NCAA women's basketball tournament in Minneapolis. And the championship game comes up a couple of days after that. Man, that is going to be some good basketball. By any chance, will you get to see any of these games?
I don't believe so. It depends on my weekend. I actually have plans on the weekend. I'm gonna try to watch them at least at home on Friday night. We'll see about the weekend, about Sunday to go into the championship. But I would just like to add that the games are being played at Target Center, and it's been a while since any sort of postseason basketball has happened there.
Yeah. I won't say why. Let's take a look at what happened in the women's basketball arena from the standpoint of ACC teams. Number 11 seed FSU fell in the first 4 to Missouri State, so did not have a good run postseason. Number 5, Virginia Tech fell in the first round, and number 12, Florida Gulf State, again, tripped up. They had a good season right up to that game. I can't even tell you what went wrong there, but it fell apart.
I've seen a lot of people really upset about the seed that Gulf Coast got, because it was one of those situations where a lot of people thought they were woefully underseeded as a 12, but it is what it is.
It doesn't make any difference because
Yep.
you could be an 8 playing a 9, right?
Yep.
You know,
Hmm.
it is what it is. Number 9, Georgia Tech fell. And speaking of 8 and 9, number 9, Georgia Tech fell in the first to number 8, Kansas. Then number 8, Miami fell in the second to number 1, South Carolina. And man, that was an amazing game from the standpoint of defense because it was not a high scoring game whatsoever. I think it was like 49-33 final, if I'm not mistaken. And great effort by Miami. It just couldn't find the offense.
Yeah, and we saw them make a big run in the ACC tournament all the way to the championship game before they fell. But they one of those teams that really came on at the end of the season. But yeah, you're running into a juggernaut in the second round, and it is what it is.
That's right. Number 5, UNC fell to number 1, South Carolina. Again, a juggernaut, as you point out, in the Sweet 16.
ACC killer, Don Staley.
Yeah. Number 5, Notre Dame fell to number 1, NC State in the Sweet 16. And then, of course, number 1, NC State falling to number 2, UConn in the Elite 8 in double overtime. Awesome game. You missed that. Watch these teams next year. That's what I have to tell you. Now, speaking of Notre Dame and South Carolina and Don Staley, and by extension, Virginia. So we have a new women's basketball coach after a failed experiment. And I'll tell you what, every athletic director has a mulligan. They have to have a mulligan at some point. I think that Carla Williams' initial hire there for the women's basketball head coaching position was a bad choice. It felt bad from the get-go. And I just thought, this is not a wise decision.
Yeah.
It turned out to be not a wise decision,
Yeah. It was definitely a flyer thinking, just because you are one of the best to ever play the women's basketball game, maybe it'll translate over to the coaching ranks. And that doesn't always work out. We've seen that in the NBA. I mean, I think Magic Johnson was a coach at one point and it just failed miserably. And same happened here with Tina Thompson. I mean, they went 5 games this season, something like that.
Yep.
And now they have as you and I were talking when the hiring was announced, they actually have a coach.
Yes. And it's important to note that, as you point out, Will, not everybody is. I've seen more people who are non-players who have played minor roles as players be better coaches. There's a mindset.
Yeah.
There's a mentality. There's something there that you see the court and the talent and everything else much clearer than people who are solely players. It's hard to describe. And I think most people kind of understand that. I mean, to be frank with you, I don't know that somebody as good as Michael Jordan, I'm not so sure that I would really want him to be a coach.
No, and to kind of use baseball as an example, see a lot of backup catchers have roles as manager. I mean, Joe Girardi immediately comes to mind. He's been a really successful manager. He was a career backup. David Ross, he's the manager of the Cubs. He was a backup catcher for a lot of his career. And I mean, those are the first 2 examples that come up at the top of my head, but there are many more. Like a lot of backup catchers have, parlayed in, that into career managers. And there have been players who have, been, bit players throughout their career have turned into head coach because they are, maybe their talents aren't, elite, but they know the game, they see the game, they know how to make other people better. And that's where they're best served.
Right. And often, I'll just say a lot of people who sit the bench spend a lot of time, sort of in the background are doing a heck of a lot of listening and observing.
Mhm.
And it's a learning process. And that's something that you pick up. If you're listening to your coaches, you're watching what they're doing, how they're implementing things, how they work with players, if they're good coaches. Okay. Because you can learn some bad stuff from bad coaches. But your point there about some of these folks who were backup catchers is spot on. These guys typically they've got a really solid knowledge of the game, and they listen, they watch, they absorb, and they take that and they implement it, and it makes all the difference in the world. So what we have at Virginia is, like you said, a coach. Now, what's going to make a difference at Virginia?
Talent.
Yes, it's going to be talent. So now, something that happened today, well, depending on what today means to you.
March 30th.
Yes. Okay. So we have a player who had considered Virginia, who was heavily recruited, and understand why she did not go to Virginia. I wouldn't have either, but she literally grew up in the backyard. Okay. Went to Notre Dame, and things, I don't know exactly, whether it was Muffet leaving or what, but things changed. Okay.
Mhm.
Things have changed, and stuff does, right? So now we have a situation where we have a key role player for the Irish who's gone into the transfer portal. And if I were the new coach at UVA, I would be knocking heavy on Mama Brunel's door, who lives just up the road from UVA. And I would be getting in contact with Sam Brunel.
Yep. I'm gonna just go ahead and get it out there. It's Amaka Agugwa Hamilton. Or if you just want to say it for short, Coach Mox.
I'm going to go with Coach Ham. So
we already have a Coach Ham.
that's okay.
He's at Florida State, but no, she, if you're not familiar, Coach Mox, she was named the head coach at University of Virginia last week, and she spent 3 years as a head coach so far at Missouri State, where she's won 83% of her games and is 46-6 in the Missouri Valley. Would have made the tournament in her first year, but obviously 2020 was wiped out due to the pandemic. Made the Sweet 16 last season in 2021, and it made the first, as you said, she wanted the play-in game and then lost in the first round this year. And she parlayed that into the Virginia job. She is originally from Virginia. She graduated from VCU. She's from Herndon, to be specific. So she has ties to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And like you said, Sam Brunel was a critical role player off the bench for Notre Dame. She has entered the transfer portal. Really highly touted kid, and like I say, I'm sure she will garner plenty of interest from Virginia. And when we said the team was lacking talent and obviously coaching, and if she does end up at Virginia, I think she will blossom.
I think so too. I think that's a great opportunity for her, and she has sort of a built-in fan base in her backyard again, which will certainly help to create something special going into, if she comes into Virginia and plays, right? So who knows? I mean, she just announced, so we'll see what happens. But it's not that I'm not pitching for everybody else in the ACC. It's just, this seems to be kind of an obvious sort of thing. All right. And I think it would be a great way to start rebuilding the Virginia basketball program.
Yep. And we should also mention too, because there was another coaching change in the ACC, as Syracuse hired Felicia Leggett-Jack, who was previously the head coach at Buffalo. And now The difference here is Leggett Jack has been a coach for 2 decades. Her first coaching season was 2002, 2003 at Hofstra, took the Indiana job, got fired from there, then took over Buffalo, and she spent the decade there, kind of built up the program in her career because she did not have a great early portion of her career, but really flourished at Buffalo, made multiple tournaments, made the Sweet 16 in 2018, and Syracuse is kind of hoping she kind of continues that magic. Like I say, she's a she's been around for a while, so she certainly knows what she's doing.
I think she'll do a great job with Syracuse. Syracuse was in a unique situation of building, had that ball rolling.
Yep.
And bad stuff.
Yep. It kind of went bad. Yeah. Not in the players, obviously.
No. I'm not going to get into that.
And we're not going to, if you don't know, Google it.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at what happened in the NIT. A couple of semi-surprises, I guess you could say. Virginia and Wake Forest. Wake Forest, though, being seeded in the NIT as a number 2. Virginia not being seeded. Both made it to the quarterfinals. Virginia fell to St. Bonaventure, and Wake Forest fell to Texas A&M. Texas A&M and Xavier are going to play for the championship on Thursday at 7 p.m. That should be a good game. I was pleasantly surprised, but also continued to be frustrated by Virginia's offensive black hole. And I think that will resolve itself next season. I think I have a feeling, based upon what I'm seeing, that it will resolve itself, and they'll be able to start putting points back up on the board. But from a defensive standpoint, it looks to me like the Cavaliers started to click. What are your thoughts? I mean,
the defense
closer than I do.
Yeah, the defense was better especially towards the end of the season. We're going to throw out that UNC game in the ACC tournament. That was just a cluster bleep. But really, it's bugaboo the entire season. And we saw it from game 1 was their inability to score on a consistent basis. When they lost to Navy on opening night, I mean, they were just terrible from 3, continued to be the theme throughout the season. When they needed a bucket, they could not get it. It was really disappointing into the season, because obviously they lost it on a couple of free throws in the final seconds against St. Bonaventure. And the final play was Kie Clark going up for a layup at the end, and the shot got blocked. But it was a down year for Virginia. They made it, like I said, to the quarterfinals of the NIT and still won 21 games, given all that. I mean, it hasn't been announced yet, but my sense is that Kie Clark is not going to use that COVID year and is just going to go on to the next phase of his life. But he kind of became one of those ballyhooed players. People, he had a very love-hate thing with the fan base, just because wasn't a great scorer, and his decision making was a little questionable at times, but still he won 75% of his games at UVA. That's pretty darn impressive, and obviously won a national title as a freshman. That was, he had, he'll probably end up playing overseas for his professional career if he chooses it. But he obviously did a lot of great things for the Virginia program over these 4 years. Now, you mentioned the future. They have to hit the portal. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. Yes, they bring in a top 15 class. Isaac McNealy, who is a kid from West Virginia, is kind of the much talked about kid of the class, because his high school plays the pack line, and so he's kind of already ready made for this. So I expect him to get some good playing time right away. But I need to see somebody out of the transfer portal who can shoot the three, and they need one or two of those guys.
Yeah,
Need a
consistently.
to stretch the stretch defense.
Yeah.
Now, Jaden Gardner, I don't know what his situation is. He did not participate in senior day, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. He has not made a decision. Some people think he might actually come back and use that COVID year, and if that's the case, great. He'll probably be a preseason All ACC, player, maybe second team. I do see Virginia being, getting back it, but yeah, they're going to have to use the portal to be a contender in the ACC next season.
My recommendation, and it doesn't mean anything other than maybe, you and I talking, and of course, people who are listening and watching this, who will know that you and I have made some recommendations in the past about players either not or go ahead, it'd be good. These are our observations. I think most of the time we're pretty much right on with this. Jaden Gardner, for me, if you put in one more year at UVA, you take advantage of that. I think it ups your stock. If you're thinking or considering going on to the next level, I think it will up your stock significantly, because I think next year will be more of a showcase for you. And getting to know that program and work it more effectively will definitely show your talents and abilities to folks who are looking at that next level. So that's my recommendation. Stay another year and up your, the bucks.
Yeah, and let me get into Wake Forest real quick before we move on. Just an outstanding season. Obviously, Alondas Williams, ACC Player of the Year, Steve Forbes, Coach of the Year. We didn't expect them to be remotely as good as they expected to be this season. Yeah, I think they were talented enough to make the tournament. They were probably one of the best at-large teams. But as we talked about with Connor O'Neill a while back, they just didn't have the schedule to get them there. Unfortunately, I mean, obviously this was made because they were just trying to build up wins and build confidence for this team, but we didn't expect them to finish fifth in the league. I think it was in this year, fifth or sixth. But obviously there are some of the players. I know Jake Laravia and Dallas Walton are both looking at the NBA, at least keeping their options open to return to school, which I think is very smart. I have not heard. I think Alondas Williams might be going. I don't know for sure. I'm a little behind on some of these notes, but a great season, no doubt. And yes, I'm curious to see what next season holds. I don't think you can make a living in the portal. You got to be able to develop your own guys. So I think Steve Forbes needs to kind of strike a balance between the two.
Yeah. And I think that's a time factor, being that he's only been there for a short period, the recruiting aspect, what he's been able to achieve with what he has will allow him now to really be able to recruit effectively, I think, or more effectively for Wake Forest. So we'll see how that all works out. Those are two teams definitely to keep an eye on next season, and to see how the recruiting trail goes for them over the next couple of months. Let's talk now about the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Miami had an absolutely great run getting into the Elite Eight before losing to Kansas. Notre Dame lost in the second round to Texas Tech. Virginia Tech lost in the first round to Texas. So now that brings us to our championship, or rather our Final Four, not the championship. Championship is going to be on Monday, April 4th, 9:20 Eastern time. On Saturday, April 2nd on TBS, for those of you watching, at 6:09 Eastern, number 2 Villanova takes on number 1 Kansas. And at 8:49, this is the premier game, for reasons that just elude me. It's number 8 North Carolina takes on number 2 Duke. wow, why would that be the premier game among all those four teams? That is going to be absolutely, from a rating standpoint, that is going to be a knockout. And no matter how the game ends, I can't even imagine what kind of numbers are going to be chalked up for that game. This is going to be off the charts, crazy.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here wondering, what are you talking about? Why is everyone so fixated on this game?
I don't know.
I they want to see Chris Carrawell blow off Hubert Davis in the handshake line or something. That's what we're expecting.
Cheers to that.
Yeah,
Let's do it
unfortunately.
again. Let's get into a full on the court brawl.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a drink in front of me, so I'll just air cheer.
I'm just sucking on coffee here.
So. I needed some earlier. I mean, here we had sleet earlier today. That was not fun. But yeah, this is it kind of felt inevitable, especially when we got to the weekend that Duke and Carolina were going to end up meeting in the Final Four, especially when you saw Duke manhandle Arkansas the way they did. And obviously Carolina ended the Cinderella run of St. Peter's, which was the story of the tournament up until now.
Up until that brick wall.
Up until that brick wall named Armando Bacot. I think he had a 2020 game against them. So yeah, they had no match for him. And we've seen quite a few times throughout the season, he is a brick wall again for certain teams.
And just very briefly, St. Peter's, what an awesome run that you guys had, and congratulations to those players and to that coach who has the vision.
Yep.
And knew what it was going to take to knock off all of these teams along the way. Congratulations. Great.
Yeah. Beat Purdue, beat Kentucky. Obviously had a phenomenal run, beat Murray State, and is now the head coach at Seton Hall, where he was once, where he has ties in the past. So cool for him. He's gonna kill it there. But as far as these two, the way Duke has played in the last 5 to 10 minutes of these last few games, the second round game, the Sweet 16 game, the Elite Eight game, where they're on another level. I in my bracket, I had them losing in the Sweet 16 to Texas Tech because I thought Texas Tech's defense would give them a lot of fits. And it did for a few minutes, because remember, Texas Tech got out 10-2 on them.
Yep.
But, and this is why, for his, Coach K is probably the best to ever do it. He's figuring out, adjustments, and his players are really responding. I mean, we've seen all these guys on the team are just having great tournaments. Mark Williams is, having a great, Paolo Banchero is, very well could end up the number one pick because of his performance in this tournament. Say Wendell Moore, Jeremy Roach has really solidified himself in this tournament. AJ Griffin as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun Saturday night, watching them take on UNC again. Obviously, we talked about Bacot and the backcourt of Davis and Love. They really need to step up in this game. I'm curious to see on the North Carolina side how Hubert Davis employs Leaky Black. Obviously, he's their best defender. Who is he going to start him on? Is he going to start him on AJ Griffin? Because Griffin really struggled in that game at Cameron because of him. Does he maybe try to get him on Banchero too? Does he mix him up? There's just so many great questions about this game that I'm excited to see, and how Davis employs Black. And he like I said, he's such a great defender, and he could pretty much guard 1 through 4 on that Duke team.
So I'm going to say I'm a greedy SOB. I really wanted to have Miami against either UNC or Duke for the championship. I wanted an all ACC championship game. So yes, insanity. Yeah. And partially because the ACC has taken so much verbal abuse from people.
And rightly so.
At the beginning of the season, yes. Okay. But by the time we got into the end of February, beginning of March, nobody should have been talking trash about the ACC.
So, side note here, and I'll just plug it here. I was on the All Sports Discussion podcast last week with our good friends Matthew and Jeff, and I made this point that on I think it was February 17th, which was the day after North Carolina lost at home to Pitt, and this is through barktorvik.com, using his numbers from February 17th to the last Sunday, which was the day of the Elite Eight games. North Carolina was the second best team in the country. That tells you just how much better they've been and how much that loss woke this team up.
Yeah. This has just been from the last couple of weeks of, I'd say, last 2 to 3 weeks of regular season, and then the ACC tournament.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like watching new teams completely come to life, and it has been fun. And that's what basketball is all about,
Yeah,
it's just anybody at any given time.
Mm-hmm. And you saw, Miami make the run to the Elite Eight, and a lot of that was, you need good guard play in the tournament. They have fantastic guard play. Isaiah Wong really stepped up. Cam McGusty, Charlie Moore was a revelation for this team this year. He made them so much better with his ball handling and his defense. He really made a big difference for that team. And like you said, no shame in their performance. I mean, that game was kind of a further cements why Bill Self is in the discussion for best coach in the country, for the way he made those adjustments on them in the second half and held them to 15 points. But that's gonna be a real fun game. Kansas is the only team left in my bracket that I have, and I actually have them winning them all. So for the sake of my bracket, I'm rooting for Kansas. As far as who wins Carolina Duke, I really don't care. There's a part of me that wants to see Carolina end K's career again, but I also want to see K go for it all, go for the championship in his final game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't really want to take sides in this, because I honestly don't care who wins. I just want to see a competitive. Both games have been blowouts. We need a close game. That's all I want.
Yeah. I think you'll get it.
I hope so.
I don't know. All I can tell you from the standpoint of my brackets got blown out a long time ago. I had 2, and I had Baylor taking it all in one, and Gonzaga in the other. And
so my work allows us to do 2 brackets, and mine one of them was busted the first night when Kentucky lost to St. Peter's. But luckily the other one was the one I had Kansas winning in. So I have a shot still.
Yeah. From the women's standpoint, I think, can't remember, but it seems to me like I picked NC State to take it. But so in that case, I'm totally out of the running for anything and everything at this point. So let's pick here. Let's make a decision, and an informed decision about who, I know it's putting you on the spot, because I'm sitting here kind of thinking, when you said, I don't care who wins between UNC and Duke, I'm sort of at the same point, because they're both ACC teams. And, I know everybody goes, well, you got to have a favorite. And I don't. All right. I just don't. I mean, I like to see everybody succeed. That's why I wanted an all ACC championship. That and being a crazy SOB. Anyway, Villanova and Kansas. Who do you think is going to take that?
I'm going to take Kansas, because I think, not only because I think they're the more talented team, but obviously Justin Moore, they're Villanova's second best player, towards Achilles at the end of the Elite Eight game, and he's going to be out. And I think that's going to be really hard to overcome, because Villanova does not have a lot of depth.
No doubt.
And I think that's going to be a real big factor here. I'm going to take Kansas to win that game.
I think it's going to be a blowout, Kansas. So
Really? You think it's going to be that big of a difference, huh?
I do. I think Kansas is that much better of a team.
I can see that, especially now without Moore.
Yeah, I think that hurts.
I would probably pick it as like a high single digit game, like a 3 possession game.
I'd say double digit.
So you're being more aggressive than I am on this.
I am, and I don't want Kansas in there. I would have taken Villanova if it hadn't been for a few physical factors. Now, UNC and Duke. I'll go first on this. I'll give you enough time to chew on it and whatever and flip a coin. Is that what you're going to do? You're going to flip a coin.
I got a coin.
Oh.
Yeah, it's for another visual for the podcast. I literally have a coin in my hand.
Okay. I'm going to take Duke is winning this one, but it's going to be a tight game. I think it will be a close game, and I think they'll pull it out at the last moment.
Yeah, it really is a coin flip game as far as I'm concerned. I know the point spread is Duke -4, but I could very easily see Carolina covering it.
Yeah.
I don't know about winning it all. Let's just go ahead and do this. It came up tails, so that means I've got Carolina winning.
Okay. So
I should have pointed out heads Duke, tails Carolina, but
well,
I had it in my head at least. But yes,
I think we all trust you.
We'll go Carolina by 1. How's that sound?
Carolina by 1. It'll be Duke by 1. So
yeah, probably
it's gonna be close.
Probably somebody from Duke is going to hit like a last second shot that'll make it a 1-point game.
Yeah, it's going to be something crazy.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it being anything other than that, and that's really what I want to see. I want to see a crazy game. I want to be on the edge of my seat through that entire game. Okay.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned one thing about how the ratings are going to be really good, and they will be, but the problem is the games are on TBS this year, and that's really going to hamper things. I know this is part of the contract that CBS signed, to do this, but I think a few years ago, I think it was 2018, I think the championship game was on TBS, and I don't remember. I don't think the ratings were great for that. And I think I think what the stat I heard is something like TBS is in like 30 million fewer homes than CBS because, a lot of people don't have the streaming services anymore, or like the cable box. They pretty much rely on Netflix and Hulu and whatever, and probably pirate the games if they really want to watch them.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point. So since we are both going in different directions with who we're picking, we'll talk about who we think will actually win it at another point. So
Yeah.
Or maybe not. But I don't know. Overall, I see a Kansas Duke game, and I see the same type of tight game that I see with Duke and UNC. I think Kansas and Duke would be a battle, an absolute battle.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
That's what we want. So
yeah, we had our chaos. Now we want our fun. I think I have Kansas winning it no matter what. I'm just rooting for my bracket at this point. I generally root for chaos, but at this point, Kansas is all I have left, and I want them to win. So I'm going to take them to win against either Carolina or Duke. And I really do think, one of the big things is Remy Martin has really stepped up for them over the last, couple of weeks in the tournament and in the latter part of the season. He's become one of their best players. Obviously, Ochai Agbaji is a really good player. He was named a finalist for the Wooden Award. He'll probably lose out to Oscar Tshiebwe. And they have they've good shooting. They're a really good defensive team. And it would not surprise me that if, late Monday night, we're seeing Bill Self and Kansas cut down the nets.
All right. Women's final, the Final Four, South Carolina versus Louisville. Tough choice.
I'm I'm going to take South Carolina just because I think I just feel like this is a really, really hard one. I'll just take South Carolina just because I feel like they are a little more talented than Louisville is, and it's not a knock on them at all. I just think that South Carolina is just a hair better, but I think we're going to see a really, really good game out of that.
I'm going to go with Louisville, and I'll tell you why. I think Walls is going to look at that Miami tape very closely and see what Miami did right and what they did wrong. And I think he's got the weapons to do everything right that Miami could not. And that's why I think Louisville will upset South Carolina. Now, Stanford and UConn. This is another tough game.
I'm gonna go with UConn because I feel like, like I said, the seed line doesn't match up the talent just because, like you said earlier, Paige Becker's missed a lot of the season, and she is an integral part of this team. I feel like with her, now, on the team, and the Final Four being literally 20, 25 minutes up the road from me, and she's from here, I think it's going to motivate her even more. So I'll take UConn to beat Stanford.
I'm going with UConn against Stanford as well. Therefore, it's Louisville and UConn in the final. So who are you going to go with?
For me, I've got South Carolina, UConn, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take Miss Dawn Staley to cut down the nets.
I'm going with Jeff Waltz cutting down the nets.
So we have the winner. So we basically have either team beating UConn, which I can get behind.
That's right.
Let me just say this about the women's game. And we used to joke about how for years it used to be the UConn Invitational every year. But I think we're finally seeing the game evolve so much more, especially these last few years when we're seeing a South Carolina step up. We saw a great Final Four. We saw Arizona come out of nowhere to make the Final Four last year, that championship grade. And remember, Notre Dame won the title a few years ago. And if you watch the men's tournament, you saw those commercials with Ogunbowale. I think that was her last name, but she hit that great shot at the end to win the tournament for Notre Dame. So it's not like they're just winning the tournament anymore. We're seeing all these talented rosters come up and win these tournaments. So it's not the UConn Invitation where we're seeing so much more parity in college in women's college basketball. It's not to the level of the men's game yet, but it's much better than it was, say, even 5, 6, 7 years ago.